Most gardeners think you need to use modern techniques to grow big harvests, but the Amish have been doing it better for centuries, without any of them. These 35 time-tested tricks make soil richer, plants stronger, and gardens easier to maintain. These method hacks cost almost nothing but deliver results modern farming often can't match. Soil warming with manure blankets. The Amish have been starting their planting season 2 weeks early for generations, and their secret weapon isn't some fancy greenhouse technology. It's aged manure spread thin across garden beds before the last frost even thinks about leaving. The layer works like a gentle heating pad for the soil, coaxing earthworms up from the depths and waking up beneficial microbes that have been sleeping through winter. The warmth radiates down into the ground, raising soil temperature by about 5 to 10 degrees compared to untreated beds. When planting day arrives, the top layer gets raked off and composted separately, leaving behind all those nutrients without any raw material touching the seeds. Some people pay good money for heated seed mats. The Amish just let their cows do the heavy lifting. The soil underneath feels noticeably warmer to the touch and crumbles easily between fingers. This early start means tomatoes are already flowering when neighbors are just getting their seedlings in the ground. The technique costs nothing beyond the time to spread and rake, and the manure would need moving anyway for barn cleaning. Seeds germinate faster in that warmth, sometimes cutting germination time nearly in half. The method has been tested across hundreds of growing seasons in Amish communities, proving its reliability even in unpredictable spring weather. Early planting means earlier harvests, which translates to fresh vegetables on the table when market prices are still high from low supply. Seed sorting by family. Most garden seeds get tossed in a drawer and forgotten until spring panic sets in. The Amish approach is methodical, dividing every saved seed into 4 clear categories based on what the plant produces. Roots go in one envelope, leaves in another. Fruits get their own section, and grain seeds stay separate. Each group has different storage needs and planting times, so keeping them organized prevents the chaos of searching through mixed packets when planting day arrives. Paper envelopes slide into glass jars or metal tins, creating a dry environment that keeps seeds viable for years longer than plastic bags. The labeling happens with pencil only because ink tends to fade or smudge in the slight moisture that naturally exists in any storage area. Each label includes the year saved, the plant variety, and which bed it came from. This system means a family can track seed performance across multiple growing seasons, learning which plants thrive in specific locations. No money gets wasted on new seed packets every spring when last year's harvest already contains next year's garden. The glass jars stack neatly in cool cupboards where temperature stays steady through winter. Seeds stored this way can remain viable for 3 to 5 years, depending on the variety, giving families flexibility in crop rotation and planning. Newspaper seed mats. Sheets of newspaper laid directly over loosened soil create a simple planting system that solves 2 problems at once. The Amish discovered this method keeps precious moisture locked in the ground while blocking sunlight that would otherwise wake up weed seeds waiting below the surface. Seeds get sprinkled evenly across the newspaper, then covered with a light layer of compost that holds everything in place. As the seedlings push upward, the newspaper begins to soften from soil moisture and break down naturally. Within a few weeks, the paper transforms into organic matter that feeds the developing roots instead of cluttering the garden. The method works particularly well for crops with tiny seeds like carrots or lettuce that are difficult to space by hand. Finally, a use for newspapers besides lining bird cages and wrapping fish. Newspaper costs nothing for most families who already receive it, and the black and white pages break down faster than glossy colored sections. The weed suppression alone saves hours of hands and knees work later in the season. Seedlings emerge in neat, evenly spaced rows without any measuring or marking required. The paper also moderates soil temperature during those first critical weeks when young plants are most vulnerable to temperature swings. By mid-season, no trace of newspaper remains visible, just healthy plants growing in enriched soil. Warm row blankets. Black fabric or old tarp spread across garden beds trap sunlight and transfer heat directly into the soil below. The Amish use this technique to prepare planting areas while the calendar still says winter. Dark materials absorb solar radiation throughout the day, warming the ground underneath by 15 to 20 degrees compared to uncovered soil. The fabric stays in place for 1 to 2 weeks, depending on weather conditions and how frozen the ground started. Once removed, the soil underneath feels dry and crumbly instead of cold and muddy. This early preparation allows cool season crops to go in the ground while other gardens are still too wet or frozen to work. The method requires no special equipment beyond whatever weatherproof material is already hanging in the barn. Roofing underlayment works exceptionally well because it's designed to handle moisture and temperature changes. The warm soil also dries out faster after spring rains, preventing that boggy mess that delays planting for weeks. Seeds planted in pre-warm soil germinate more reliably because they're not sitting in cold, wet conditions where rot becomes a risk. The technique essentially extends the growing season on both ends without any permanent infrastructure or ongoing costs. Seed spacing board. A flat board with holes drilled at specific intervals eliminates the guesswork from planting day. The Amish crafted these tools decades ago and still use the same boards today, with hole spacing customized for each crop family grows. The board gets laid across prepared soil and seeds drop through the holes, landing exactly where they need to be. This prevents the common problem of planting too thick and then having to thin seedlings later, which wastes both seeds and labor. Different boards serve different crops because lettuce needs closer spacing than tomatoes, and beans require more room than radishes. The drilling pattern follows traditional spacing wisdom passed down through generations of successful harvests. Using the board takes about 1/3 the time of hand planting, while producing more uniform results. Turns out the secret to a perfect garden is just playing a really slow game of pegboard. Perfect spacing means plants don't compete for nutrients or sunlight, leading to healthier growth and bigger yields. The boards are usually made from scrap lumber that would otherwise get burned or discarded. Each one lasts for decades with no maintenance beyond an occasional wipe down. Children can use these boards successfully, making planting day a true family activity where even the youngest members contribute meaningfully. The uniformity also makes cultivating easier because plant rows line up predictably for hoeing or hand weeding. Porch side. Herb beds. Recycled wooden boxes and old metal troughs find new purpose just steps from the kitchen door in Amish homesteads. These elevated containers hold hardy herbs like parsley, thyme, chives, and sage that tolerate both cool springs and hot summers. The positioning near the house means fresh ingredients are always within reach when cooking, eliminating trips to a distant garden bed. Raising the containers off the ground also brings the herbs to a comfortable height for harvesting without bending or kneeling. The soil in these boxes drains quickly, which herbs prefer over the heavier ground soil used for vegetables. Each container gets filled with a mixture of compost and sand that prevents waterlogging while still holding enough moisture for steady growth. Frequent trimming throughout the season keeps the plants bushy and productive, rather than leggy and sparse. The proximity to daily foot traffic means these herbs get checked constantly, so problems get noticed and addressed before they become serious. This setup saves significant garden space that can be used for larger crops while still providing all the culinary herbs a household needs. The boxes themselves cost nothing when made from salvaged materials, and herbs are among the few plants that actually produce more when you harvest them regularly. Many families keep these herb boxes going year-round by moving them to a protected spot or covering them during the coldest months. Bucket potato patch. Large buckets or tubs become productive potato patches when filled correctly and managed through the growing season. The Amish start with just a few inches of soil in the bottom, then place seed potato pieces with eyes facing upward. A light covering of soil goes over the potatoes, and the bucket sits in full sun to begin growth. As the potato vines grow taller, more soil gets added gradually until the container is nearly full. This layering encourages the plant to produce potatoes along the buried stem instead of just at the original planting depth. A 5-gallon bucket can yield 10 to 15 pounds of potatoes if managed well, which is remarkable considering the small footprint. The method works particularly well for families with limited garden space or poor soil quality in their yard. Potatoes are like teenagers. Give them room to grow in the right conditions, and they'll produce more than expected. Harvest becomes incredibly simple because you just tip the bucket and collect the potatoes without digging through hard ground. The containers are portable so they can be moved to catch optimal sunlight or tucked away if frost threatens late in the season. This technique also reduces problems with soil-borne diseases and pests that plague traditional potato patches. Any bucket or tub works as long as it has drainage holes in the bottom to prevent waterlogging. Jar top plant protectors. Old glass jars become emergency greenhouses when unexpected cold snaps threaten tender seedlings in Amish gardens. The jars go over individual plants at dusk when frost seems likely, trapping ground warmth and creating a protective microclimate around each seedling. Glass allows sunlight through during the day while blocking cold wind that can damage young leaves. The system requires removing jars each morning once temperatures rise, giving plants access to fresh air and preventing overheating under the glass. This nightly routine continues until the weather stabilizes and frost danger passes completely. The method has saved countless early plantings from ruin over the generations. Every household keeps a collection of jars specifically for this purpose, stored where they're easy to grab when weather forecasts turn threatening. The technique costs absolutely nothing for families who already save jars for canning and other uses. Young plants protected this way suffer no setback from cold exposure, continuing their growth without the stunting that happens when frost damages leaves. The jars also protect from some insects and small animals that might nibble on tender shoots. Each jar can be reused indefinitely, making this one of the most economical frost protection methods available. Onion bed borders. Planting onions and garlic along the outer edges of every garden bed creates a living barrier against various pests. The Amish rely on the strong scent these plants produce to confuse and deter insects, rabbits, and even burrowing animals like moles. The smell doesn't harm the pests, but makes the area less appealing for feeding or nesting. Onions grow easily alongside other crops because their root systems don't compete aggressively for nutrients. They pair particularly well with carrots and lettuce, which have different nutrient needs and root depths. The border planting also maximizes garden space by using areas that might otherwise remain empty. Rabbits may not cry when cutting onions, but they certainly stay away from gardens that smell like them. Onions mature at different times than most vegetables, so harvesting them doesn't disturb the main crops. Once the tops begin to droop and turn brown, the onions are ready to pull and cure in the sun for storage. Properly dried onions can last 6 to 8 months in a cool, dry location, providing cooking ingredients well into winter. The method has been tested across countless growing seasons in Amish communities with consistent success. Each year, the healthiest bulbs from the harvest get separated and replanted the following season, maintaining the cycle without purchasing new sets. The pest deterrent effect is noticeable enough that beds without onion borders typically show more damage from rabbits and insects. Clover cover. Sowing clover between crop rows after seedlings establish themselves solves multiple problems simultaneously. The Amish value clover for its ability to fix nitrogen from the air and transfer it into the soil through its root system. This natural fertilization process feeds neighboring crops throughout the growing season without any application of manure or compost. Clover also creates a living mulch that keeps soil moist and blocks sunlight from reaching weed seeds. The plants grow low to the ground and don't compete with taller vegetables for light or space. If the clover grows too enthusiastically, a light trimming keeps it under control while adding more organic matter to the soil surface. Clover works harder than most hired help and never asks for lunch breaks. The nitrogen contribution from clover can be substantial, equivalent to applying several inches of compost across the same area. White clover works particularly well because it tolerates foot traffic and doesn't get tall enough to interfere with vegetable harvests. The seeds cost very little, and once established, clover often reseeds itself year after year. Gardens with clover between rows show noticeably better plant health and higher yields compared to bare soil. The practice also supports beneficial insects that prey on garden pests, creating a more balanced ecosystem. Pulling out clover at season's end adds valuable organic matter back into the beds for next year's crops. Pathway crops. Growing quick-maturing vegetables like lettuce, radishes, and spinach between garden pathways makes use of every available inch of growing space. The Amish plant these pathway crops densely because they'll be harvested young before their roots spread significantly. The practice protects soil in high-traffic areas from compaction while producing extra food from space that would otherwise grow nothing but weeds. Harvesting these crops happens from the pathway side, so workers never need to step into the main growing beds. This prevents soil compression around the roots of primary crops, which can significantly impact their productivity. The pathway vegetables can be rotated every few weeks, with new seeds going in as soon as the previous crop gets harvested. This continuous planting extends the harvest season for salad ingredients and quick-cooking greens. Radishes mature in as little as 3 weeks, making them perfect for filling gaps in the planting schedule. The dense planting and pathways also create shade that helps keep the soil cooler during hot summer months. Many families time these plantings to coincide with specific meals or events when extra fresh vegetables would be particularly welcome. The technique requires minimal additional effort beyond the regular garden maintenance, but can increase total harvest by 15 to 20%. Coffee and eggshell mix. Used coffee grounds and crushed eggshells get saved in a tin by the kitchen sink in Amish households, then scattered around certain plants that benefit from their properties. Tomatoes, peppers, and squash respond particularly well to this mixture because coffee grounds add nitrogen and improve soil structure, while eggshells provide calcium that prevents blossom end rot. The grounds also help acidify soil slightly, which these crops prefer, and the rough texture deters slugs from crawling over them to reach plant stems. Crushing eggshells into small pieces makes the calcium more readily available to plant roots instead of taking years to break down. The mixture goes directly into planting holes during transplanting or gets worked into the soil surface around established plants. Garden slugs treat coffee grounds like most people treat a cold swimming pool on a winter morning. Many families notice stronger stems and darker green leaves on plants that receive this treatment regularly. The coffee grounds need to be used or composted, and eggshells would otherwise get discarded. So the method utilizes materials that every household produces anyway. Some gardeners report that the coffee smell also helps mask the scent of plants from deer and rabbits, though this effect varies by location. The calcium from eggshells becomes especially important during periods of rapid fruit development when plants need it most. A typical family produces enough coffee grounds and eggshells to treat 20 to 30 plants throughout the growing season. Tea water feed. Cooled tea or leftover tea leaves poured around plant bases provide a gentle nutrient boost without the risk of burning roots. The Amish discovered that tea contains trace minerals and a small amount of nitrogen that encourages leafy growth and overall plant health. Flowers and leafy greens respond especially well to this treatment, often showing deeper color and more vigorous growth. The tea must be completely cooled before application because hot liquid can damage roots and soil organisms. Unsweetened tea works best because sugar attracts ants and can promote fungal growth in the soil. Black tea, green tea, and herbal teas all work equally well, with no noticeable difference in plant response. The tannins in tea may also help acidify soil slightly, which benefits plants like blueberries and azaleas that prefer lower pH. Most households brew tea daily, making this another example of finding garden value in everyday kitchen byproducts. The leaves themselves can be mixed into compost or work directly into soil around plants where they'll break down gradually. This method delivers nutrients slowly over time rather than all at once, preventing the boom and bust growth patterns that can stress plants. Regular applications throughout the growing season maintain steady nutrient availability without any purchased fertilizers. Water-holding soil. Mix. Blending equal parts, soil, compost, and coarse sand creates a growing medium that holds moisture longer without becoming waterlogged. The Amish developed this mixture specifically for raised beds and container gardens where drainage and moisture retention both matter. Regular garden soil compacts in containers and either dries too quickly or stays soggy depending on conditions. The compost adds organic matter that absorbs water like a sponge but releases it gradually to plant roots. Sand improves drainage and prevents compaction, keeping the mixture loose enough for roots to penetrate easily. This combination reduces watering frequency by nearly half compared to straight garden soil, which particularly benefits older gardeners who find daily watering difficult. Soil acts like a good marriage. The right balance keeps everything from falling apart or drowning. The mixture also warms faster in spring, allowing earlier planting in raised beds and containers. Each ingredient is readily available on most farms, making the mix cost-free to produce. The proportions can be adjusted slightly based on what crops will grow in the mixture, with more sand for herbs and more compost for vegetables. Containers filled with this blend produce healthier plants with stronger root systems because the roots never suffer from either drought stress or oxygen deprivation. The mixture breaks down slowly over time as organic matter decomposes, so it needs refreshing with new compost every few years. Plants growing in this mix typically show better drought tolerance and require less frequent fertilization throughout the season. Early morning watering. Watering plants before sunrise maximizes water absorption and minimizes waste in Amish gardens. The cooler morning temperatures mean less evaporation, allowing more water to reach plant roots instead of disappearing into the air. This timing can save up to 40% of water compared to midday watering when the sun is strongest. Early watering also keeps foliage dry throughout the day, which prevents mildew and fungal diseases that thrive on wet leaves. The Amish schedule their morning chores around this practice, making it part of the daily routine before breakfast. Plants absorb water most efficiently during early hours when their systems are primed for uptake after the cool night. The soil is also cooler in the morning, so water penetrates deeper instead of running off hard, sun-baked ground. Gardens watered in the morning show stronger growth and better disease resistance throughout the season. Gentle pruning routine. Small scissors or hand shears handle the weekly task of removing weak or tangled stems from garden plants. The Amish approach pruning as an ongoing maintenance task rather than a major seasonal event. Removing just a few problematic stems each week keeps plants tidy and directs energy toward productive growth. This gentle method prevents the shock that can occur when plants receive severe pruning all at once. Better air circulation through the plant reduces disease pressure and helps leaves dry faster after rain or dew. Plants appreciate regular trims like most people appreciate regular haircuts, except plants never complain about the results. The removed stems go straight into the compost pile where they'll eventually feed future crops. Weekly attention means problems get spotted early, whether it's disease, insect damage, or nutrient deficiency. The cumulative effect of consistent light pruning produces bushier, more productive plants than those left completely alone. Branch supports. Sturdy tree trimmings from winter pruning become natural plant supports when spring planting season arrives. The Amish collect these branches and store them in dry locations until they're needed for peas, beans, peppers, and other crops requiring support. The branches blend naturally into the garden landscape and provide secure anchoring points for climbing plants. Unlike metal or plastic stakes, these wooden supports eventually decompose and return nutrients to the soil. The irregular shape of natural branches actually provides more attachment points for climbing tendrils than smooth, uniform stakes. Each branch gets pushed deep into the ground to ensure stability even when plants are heavy with produce. The cost is absolutely zero because pruning happens anyway for tree health and orchard maintenance. Different diameter branches serve different purposes, with thicker ones supporting heavy crops like indeterminate tomatoes and thinner ones working well for peas. Shade pairs. Planting tender greens like spinach and lettuce beside tall crops creates natural shade protection during hot summer months. The Amish pair these crops deliberately, using corn or pole beans as living umbrellas for heat-sensitive vegetables. The taller plants cast cooling shadow during the harshest midday sun while still allowing morning and evening light to reach the greens below. This arrangement prevents leaf burn and bitterness that develops when lettuce and spinach get too much direct sun. The shade also helps soil retain moisture longer, reducing the watering needs for the understory crops. Mother Nature invented companion planting long before gardening books tried to take credit for it. The technique maximizes garden space by using the vertical dimension rather than just spreading plants across the ground. Cool season greens can continue producing weeks longer when protected from intense heat this way. The root systems occupy different soil depths, so they're not competing for the same nutrients. Cornstalk bean supports. Dried corn stalks from last year's harvest stand ready to support this season's climbing beans. The Amish saved these stalks specifically for this purpose, turning one harvest into infrastructure for the next. The hollow stalks get pushed deep into the ground where they remain stable even as heavy bean vines climb upward. Bean plants naturally twine around the rough texture of corn stalks, finding plenty of grip without any tying or training. As the growing season progresses, the old stalks slowly decompose, feeding the soil around the bean roots. This method eliminates the need to purchase stakes or poles that must be stored between seasons. Each cornstalk can support 2 or 3 bean plants, making efficient use of garden space. The practice exemplifies the circular nature of Amish gardening, where every harvest provides resources for future plantings. The decomposing stalks also add carbon to the soil, balancing the nitrogen that bean plants contribute. Bottle drip feeder. Plastic bottles with tiny holes poked in their caps become slow-release watering systems for individual plants. The Amish bury these bottles neck down near plant roots, filling them with water that seeps out gradually over several days. This deep watering encourages roots to grow downward rather than spreading shallow near the surface. Plants watered this way develop stronger root systems that can access moisture from deeper soil layers during dry spells. Tomatoes get their own personal water cooler, minus the awkward small talk with coworkers. The bottles work particularly well for thirsty crops like tomatoes, cucumbers, and squash that need consistent moisture. Each bottle requires refilling only once or twice weekly instead of daily surface watering. The system prevents water waste from runoff and evaporation since moisture goes directly to the root zone. The hole size determines flow rate, with smaller holes providing slower, more sustained release. Garlic corner plots. 4 corner sections of each garden plot get dedicated to garlic planting in Amish growing systems. The strategic positioning creates a perimeter defense against various garden pests without using any chemicals or sprays. Garlic releases sulfur compounds through its roots and leaves that many insects and rodents find unpleasant. The smell doesn't eliminate pests entirely, but makes the garden less attractive as a feeding ground. Each corner plot produces enough garlic for household cooking needs while serving this protective function. The cloves get planted in fall, establishing strong root systems before winter and emerging early in spring. This timing means the garlic is already growing vigorously when other crops get planted and need protection. Harvesting happens in midsummer, and the largest bulbs from each harvest provide cloves for fall replanting. Gardens using this layout consistently show less damage from rabbits, groundhogs, and certain insect pests. Simple compost pockets. Small holes dug near heavy feeding plants become direct composting sites throughout the growing season. The Amish drop vegetable scraps, fruit peels, and plant trimmings directly into these pockets and cover them with soil. The organic matter breaks down right where nutrients are needed most, feeding plant roots as decomposition occurs. This method eliminates trips to a distant compost pile while distributing fertility evenly across the garden. Each pocket gets filled gradually over several weeks, then covered permanently, and a new one started nearby. Burying kitchen scraps in the garden is like running a restaurant where the customers pay you in tomatoes. The decomposing material also improves soil structure, creating loose, crumbly earth that roots penetrate easily. Earthworms discover these pockets quickly and congregate around them, further enhancing soil quality. The technique works particularly well around tomatoes, squash, and peppers that demand high nutrient levels throughout their growing season. Compost water feed. A shovel of finished compost soaked overnight in a bucket of water creates a gentle liquid fertilizer. The Amish pour this compost tea around plant bases, delivering nutrients in a form that roots absorb immediately. The water extracts soluble nutrients from the compost while leaving behind the bulky material that stays in the bucket. This liquid application works faster than top dressing with solid compost because plants can access the nutrients right away. The tea is mild enough that it won't burn tender roots, even if applied generously. Plants show response within days with darker green leaves and more vigorous growth. The remaining compost in the bucket still has value and gets spread around plants after the water is poured off. Each bucket of water can be reused several times by adding fresh compost and letting it steep again. This method stretches a limited compost supply much further than using it only as solid mulch. Straw walkways. Thick layers of straw spread between garden rows create clean, comfortable walking surfaces. The Amish use straw from their own grain harvests, giving it purpose after threshing is complete. The material keeps shoes clean during wet weather and prevents soil compaction in high-traffic areas. Walking on straw instead of bare soil protects the ground structure that plant roots depend on. The straw also suppresses weeds in pathways and holds moisture in the soil beneath it. Garden paths get better treatment than some living room carpets, and they work harder too. As the season progresses, the straw begins breaking down and can be worked into the soil during fall preparation. This adds organic matter exactly where feet have been walking all season, repairing any compaction damage. Fresh straw goes down each spring, with the process taking just an hour or two for an average garden. Gardens with straw pathways maintain better soil structure and show improved plant growth. Reflective boards. Light-colored boards or old metal sheets positioned near plants redirect sunlight toward shaded areas. The Amish place these reflectors beside fences, barns, or anywhere crops aren't getting optimal light exposure. The reflected light helps plants photosynthesize more efficiently, leading to better growth and fruit ripening. This technique particularly benefits crops planted on the north side of structures where direct sun is limited. Tomatoes and peppers near reflectors often ripen a week or more earlier than those without this assistance. The boards can be scrap lumber painted white or any naturally light-colored material that won't decay quickly outdoors. Metal roofing panels work exceptionally well because they reflect strongly and last for years. The positioning gets adjusted through the season as the sun angle changes and plants grow taller. Even a few hours of additional reflected light daily makes a noticeable difference in plant productivity. Light hand. Weeding. Pulling weeds immediately after watering when soil is soft makes the task much easier. The Amish dedicate a few minutes daily to hand weeding rather than letting weeds establish and require hours of labor later. Wet soil releases weed roots cleanly without breaking them off and leaving portions that will regrow. This timing also means weeds come out while they're still small and haven't yet produced seeds. Weeds are like bad habits, much easier to pull when they first show up than after they've settled in. A daily walk through the garden serves double duty, checking plant health while removing any weeds that appeared since yesterday. Children can participate in this light weeding without the physical strain of heavy hoeing. The removed weeds go into the compost pile if they haven't gone to seed, returning their nutrients to the garden cycle. Gardens maintained this way never develop serious weed problems because nothing gets a chance to establish. Fence-line vines. Training cucumbers and pole beans to grow along existing fences saves garden space while improving air circulation. The Amish guide these vines onto fence wires or rails where they climb naturally without additional support structures. Fruits hang freely in the air rather than sitting on damp ground where they could rot or be eaten by pests. Harvesting is easier because everything is at eye level or above instead of hidden under leaves on the ground. The vertical growing pattern also allows better light penetration and air movement through the plants. Better air circulation reduces fungal diseases that thrive in humid, crowded conditions. Each fence section can support multiple plants, dramatically increasing the production from a small garden footprint. The fence serves its original purpose while providing valuable growing space. Perimeter fences around the entire garden property can produce substantial crops without taking any dedicated garden bed space. The vines also create a living privacy screen during the growing season. Quick turn crops. Empty garden beds after summer harvests get replanted immediately with fast maturing crops. The Amish sow mustard greens, turnips, or radishes that will mature before the first hard frost arrives. These quick crops protect bare soil from erosion and nutrient loss during the vulnerable transition period. The plants also scavenge leftover nutrients from the soil that would otherwise leach away over winter. Late-season plantings are like getting a second dessert nobody expected, but everyone appreciates. When frost finally kills these late crops, they can be turned directly into the soil as green manure. This adds organic matter and nutrients exactly where next spring's crops will need them. The practice keeps the garden ecosystem active and healthy rather than lying dormant for months. Quick-turn crops also suppress weeds that would otherwise establish themselves in empty beds. Many of these late-season plantings are edible, providing fresh greens when most gardens have finished producing. Straw bale beds. Straw bales stacked and filled with compost create temporary raised beds for cool season crops. The Amish use this method for lettuce, herbs, and other plants that benefit from the warmth retained inside decomposing straw. The bales act as insulation, keeping the growing medium warmer through cool nights and early frosts. Plants in these beds often survive several degrees of frost that would damage crops in traditional beds. Setup requires just stacking bales in the desired configuration and hollowing out the tops to hold soil or compost. The bales slowly decompose throughout the season, releasing nutrients that feed the plants above. By the following spring, the bales have broken down into rich organic material perfect for regular garden beds. This transformation means the bales serve dual purposes, first as growing containers and then as soil amendment. The method works particularly well for extending the lettuce season into winter in milder climates. Night frost shields. Old bed sheets and blankets kept near the kitchen door stand ready for unexpected frost warnings. The Amish cover tender crops at dusk when temperatures are predicted to drop below freezing overnight. The fabric traps ground warmth and prevents frost from forming directly on plant leaves. This simple protection can save weeks of growth and prevent the loss of crops that are nearly ready to harvest. Morning removal lets sunlight and air reach the plants once danger has passed. The sheets get used season after season, making this one of the most economical frost protection methods available. Tucking in the garden at night is easier than tucking in children, and the vegetables never ask for one more glass of water. Heavy blankets work better than thin sheets for severe frost warnings, providing more insulation. The technique extends the growing season by several weeks on both ends, protecting early spring plantings and late fall crops. The covers need to reach the ground on all sides to trap warmth effectively. Leaf blanket mulch. Fallen autumn leaves raked into thick layers over empty garden beds provide winter protection. The Amish spread leaves 6 to 8 inches deep across all areas that won't be planted until spring. This blanket prevents soil erosion from winter winds and rain while maintaining better soil structure. Earthworms pull the leaves underground throughout winter, creating tunnels that improve drainage and aeration. By spring, much of the leaf layer has transformed into rich, dark humus that plants thrive in. The remaining whole leaves can be raked aside for planting or worked directly into the soil. This method eliminates the need for fall tilling that disrupts soil organisms and structure. The leaves also insulate the ground, keeping beneficial microbes and insects alive through cold weather. Gardens mulched this way warm up faster in spring because the dark decomposed material absorbs more solar heat. The technique costs nothing and uses material that would otherwise need disposal. Rain barrel saving. Wooden barrels or metal tubs positioned under roof eaves capture rainfall for later use. The Amish cover these containers with mesh screening to prevent mosquito breeding while allowing water collection. A single inch of rain falling on a 1,000-square-foot roof produces over 600 gallons of collectible water. Rain barrels are like savings accounts, except the deposits come from the sky and withdrawals water tomatoes instead of paying bills. This stored water serves seedling trays, transplants, and container plants throughout the growing season. Rainwater lacks the chlorine and other chemicals found in municipal water supplies that can stress sensitive plants. The slightly acidic nature of rainwater actually benefits most garden plants better than neutral well water. Collection requires only containers and basic screening materials that last for years. The barrels get positioned strategically around the property to minimize water hauling distances. During dry spells, this stored water can make the difference between crop success and failure. Garden worm corner renewal. One corner of the garden gets dedicated each fall to creating next year's richest soil. The Amish dig a trench in this area and fill it with food scraps, leaves, and straw before winter arrives. Soil covers the organic materials, and earthworms spend the cold months breaking everything down underground. By spring, this corner contains the darkest, most fertile soil in the entire garden. Heavy feeders like tomatoes, peppers, and squash get planted here where the concentrated fertility supports their demanding growth. The trench location rotates yearly, gradually improving different sections of the garden over time. This rotating renewal system steadily builds soil quality across the entire growing area. The method requires no purchased inputs and uses materials generated by normal household and farm activities. Worms multiply dramatically in these trenches, spreading throughout the surrounding garden beds. Gardens managed with rotating worm trenches show consistently higher yields year after year. Seed cleaning and saving. The healthiest plants in each year's garden provide seeds for the following season. The Amish select seed from plants that showed strong disease resistance, early maturity, or exceptional productivity. Seeds get dried thoroughly on screens or paper in a warm, well-ventilated location away from direct sunlight. Complete drying prevents mold during storage and maintains seed viability for multiple years. Saving seeds is cheaper than buying new packets and gives plants that actually know how to survive in your specific garden conditions. Paper envelopes hold the dried seeds better than plastic, which can trap residual moisture. Each envelope gets labeled with the crop name, variety, and year saved to maintain organized records. Storage happens in a cool cupboard where temperature remains stable through winter. Properly stored seeds maintain germination rates of 80% or higher for 3 to 5 years depending on the crop. This practice eliminates the annual expense of purchasing new seeds. Three Sisters. Garden Magic. The Amish utilize the Three Sisters method, growing corn, beans, and squash together in a mutually beneficial relationship. Corn provides natural poles for beans to climb, beans add nitrogen to the soil feeding the corn, and squash leaves spread out like living mulch, preventing weeds and retaining moisture. This planting style creates its own microclimate, providing partial shade and naturally suppressing weeds. Amish farmers spend about 70% less time weeding these plots compared to conventional beds. For proper implementation, plant corn in clusters of 4 to 5 stalks, spaced 3 to 4 feet apart. When corn reaches 6 inches tall, plant 3 to 4 bean seeds around each cluster. After another week, plant squash seeds between the corn clusters. This timing staggers growth perfectly. Originally developed by Native Americans thousands of years ago, this companion planting method was later adopted by the Amish, who incorporated it into their sustainable farming practices. The Three Sisters approach typically yields 20% more food from the same space compared to planting these crops separately. Quilt gardening. Amish gardens resemble patchwork quilts rather than straight rows for practical reasons. While straight rows accommodate tractors, quilt layouts better serve hand gardeners. This arrangement features square or rectangular beds with pathways between them, allowing access to plants without stepping on growing areas. By reaching plants from any side, gardeners walk approximately 47% less distance than with conventional rows. It's like the difference between taking the scenic route or the shortcut to the buffet table, and we all know which one gets you to the food faster. Creating this layout requires only string and stakes to mark garden beds. Make beds about 4 feet wide with 2 footpaths between them. Cover pathways with wood chips or straw to prevent weeds. This design also improves water conservation. Undisturbed soil remains loose, absorbing water more efficiently. In contrast, compacted soil from row gardens can reduce water absorption by up to 40%, requiring more frequent watering and causing increased runoff. Most Amish gardeners report needing to water their quilt gardens half as often as conventional row gardens. The Amish weather forecast. The Amish rely on natural signals rather than technology to guide their planting. Woolly caterpillars serve as winter predictors. A wider brown middle section suggests a milder winter, while a narrow band indicates harsh conditions. Moon phases influence planting schedules. Root crops like potatoes and carrots are planted during the waning moon, while above-ground crops like tomatoes grow better when planted during the waxing moon. Research shows germination rates increase by up to 15% when planting aligns with appropriate moon phases. 3 natural signs indicate proper soil planting temperature: oak leaves reaching squirrel's ear size, abundant dandelion blooms, and maple trees releasing sap. When these occur simultaneously, soil has typically reached 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, ideal for most vegetables. These indicators appear in Amish farming almanacs dating back to the early 1800s, demonstrating their reliability through consistent correlation with soil temperature readings. The Amish have tracked these patterns for generations, creating localized climate knowledge that often proves more accurate for specific garden plots than general weather forecasts. Year-round planting calendar. The Amish treat gardening as a year-round task. Winter is key planting time, when families sketch garden maps on graph paper, noting each bed with planting dates and succession plans. Once spring crops are harvested, the same space hosts fall vegetables. Amish gardens never rest, they just switch jobs. Succession planting ensures continuous harvests. Instead of planting all lettuce at once, small batches go in every 2 weeks, keeping fresh veggies on the table all season. Generational formulas guide planting. 15 to 20 tomato plants per person for fresh use and canning. 10 to 15 pole bean plants and 10 pounds of seed potatoes per person, yielding about 100 pounds. These tried-and-true methods help grow enough food for 9 to 10 months from a garden about half the size of a tennis court. Zone gardening for less work. Have you ever trudged across your entire garden just to snip a sprig of parsley for dinner? The Amish would shake their heads at such inefficiency. Their zone gardening approach groups plants by care requirements, saving countless steps throughout the growing season. Imagine your garden divided into 3 simple zones: daily, weekly, and monthly. The daily zone sits closest to your kitchen door, filled with herbs and vegetables you harvest frequently. When cooking dinner, you're just a few steps from fresh basil or lettuce. Meanwhile, potatoes, winter squash, and other crops that need minimal attention until harvest time occupy the monthly zone furthest from your house. This thoughtful arrangement might seem obvious, but it's remarkable how few gardeners implement it. One elderly Amish woman laughed when she told me about visiting her English, non-Amish, neighbor who planted mint at the far corner of her property, requiring a daily trek across the yard just for tea herbs. 5 minutes spent planting these zones can literally save miles of walking over a growing season. And for the Amish, who value efficiency and practicality, this common-sense approach turns garden work from a burden into a pleasure. Trash can lasagna. Composting. Forget pricey tumblers and fussy systems. The Amish lasagna method turns composting into a no-fuss process using a simple plastic trash can with drainage holes. Layer green materials, like kitchen scraps and grass clippings, with brown ones, like dried leaves, newspaper, or cardboard, just like you'd build a lasagna. What sets this apart? No turning required. Unlike traditional composting that demands weekly turning, this method builds enough heat to break everything down on its own. Just keep adding layers on top and scoop out rich compost from the bottom when ready. One Amish gardener shared how they compost coffee grounds, eggshells, even floor dust. "Nothing goes to waste in our homes," she said proudly. After one season, many gardeners stopped buying fertilizer altogether, saving money and boosting soil health naturally. The rabbit manure secret. While many gardeners spend big on fertilizers, the Amish rely on a humble, nearly free alternative: rabbit manure. Unlike cow or chicken droppings that need months to compost, rabbit pellets can be used straight on garden beds without harming plants. A single rabbit hutch placed near the garden can fertilize an entire family's vegetable plot. Amish-built hutches have wire bottoms and trays underneath, making collection easy. Just scatter the pellets around your plants and let rainwater do the rest. The results are impressive. Crops grown with rabbit manure often outperform those treated with store-bought fertilizers. Tomatoes thrive, lettuce gets lush, and plants resist pests more easily. The garden knows the difference between chemicals and what comes from animals, one Amish farmer told me. While others spend hundreds at garden centers, he relies on this simple method to grow show-stopping harvests. Cover crops. To feed soil. When autumn arrives and garden beds empty, most people leave the soil bare until spring. The Amish, however, see this as a missed opportunity to build soil fertility naturally through cover crops, what they often call green manure. Rather than leaving garden beds empty, Amish gardeners immediately plant quick-growing crops like rye, clover, or buckwheat. These plants serve multiple purposes. They prevent erosion, suppress weeds, and add organic matter to the soil. But most importantly, they pull nutrients from deep in the earth and make them available for next season's vegetables. The beauty of this system is its simplicity. Even with imperfect timing, any cover crop improves your soil more than bare ground. And contrary to popular belief, cover crops work wonderfully even in small gardens. You don't need acres of land to benefit from this practice. One Amish farmer I spoke with hasn't purchased fertilizer in 5 years, relying entirely on cover crops to feed his soil. "The plants do the work while I rest," he said with a twinkle in his eye. When spring arrives, he simply turns the cover crops into the soil 2 weeks before planting, allowing all those nutrients to become available right when his vegetables need them most. This natural cycle mimics nature's own system of soil building, something the Amish have understood for generations. Wood ash, garden gold. Winter evenings by the fireplace produce valuable garden fertilizer for Amish families. The ashes contain calcium, potassium, and minerals that vegetables need. Amish families collect fireplace ashes in coffee cans through winter, accumulating enough free calcium-rich fertilizer for their garden by spring. Wood ash often works better than commercial lime for most garden soils, especially acidic ones. Vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, and root crops improve with ash applications, while acid-loving plants like blueberries and potatoes should remain ash-free. One Amish gardener noted, "My tomatoes know the difference between store-bought calcium and what comes from our own hearth. Apply ash lightly around established plants, never directly on seedlings. A light dusting provides enough minerals for the growing season. While neighbors spend on bags of lime, you'll be putting fireplace waste to productive use, as Amish gardeners have done for generations." Weeds that work for you. Amish growers see certain weeds as garden allies. Plants like comfrey, dandelion, and yarrow have deep taproots that bring up minerals from subsoil that vegetables can't reach. The Amish use the cut and drop method, trimming these beneficial weeds at ground level and leaving them as mulch. As they decompose, they release stored nutrients where vegetables need them. These dynamic accumulators contribute more to soil health than many cultivated plants. Comfrey leaves contain higher potassium levels than most commercial fertilizers. These helper plants require no care, growing vigorously without watering or attention. While neighbors pull every dandelion, you'll be cultivating strategic weeds that work harder than many store-bought soil amendments. Clay pot, underground irrigation. The Amish practice an ancient irrigation technique using unglazed clay pots buried in the garden, reducing watering time by up to 70%. Porous clay naturally sweats water through its walls. Buried pots with rims showing above soil deliver moisture directly to plant roots for days. While surface water evaporates quickly, this system ensures nearly every drop reaches plants. Amish gardeners find affordable pots at thrift stores and yard sales. Even crack pots work perfectly. Cracks help distribute water more effectively. They bury different size pots at varying depths depending on plant type. During a recent drought, an Amish community continued harvesting abundant vegetables while neighboring gardens withered, using this ancient method that delivers water exactly where and when plants need it. Mulch secrets for better gardens. The Amish mulching system creates what they call a garden that tends itself, using free materials from their farms: straw, leaves, grass clippings, and sawdust. They wait until soil has completely warmed before applying summer mulch, preventing cold, wet conditions that slow growth. For stubborn perennial weeds, they first lay down newspaper, avoiding glossy pages, then cover with natural mulch. This two-layer approach blocks persistent weeds while allowing water to penetrate. "I used to spend Saturdays weeding," one Amish woman said. "Now I spend them picking flowers." Proper mulching can decrease weeding time by up to 90%. For plants prone to fungal issues, the Amish leave a small circle of bare soil around stems while mulching heavily between rows, a detail many conventional gardeners miss. Catching rainwater in soil. While many gardeners invest in expensive rain barrels, the Amish prefer catching rainwater directly in the soil where plants need it. This approach requires no containers, no complicated downspout systems, and no maintenance, just thoughtful garden design. By observing how water naturally flows across their property during rainfall, Amish gardeners identify opportunities to slow that water down and direct it to growing areas. They create simple swales, shallow ditches with berms on the downhill side that capture rainwater and allow it to soak slowly into the ground rather than running off. The tool most valuable for this work isn't a fancy level or the laser sight, but a simple observation of puddles and natural water flow during rainstorms. Water tells you where it wants to go, an Amish farmer explained. We just help it stay where we need it. Properly sized swales make an enormous difference during both wet and dry periods. During heavy rains, they prevent erosion by capturing runoff. During droughts, plants growing near these water-capturing zones remain vibrant while others struggle. One Amish garden I visited remained productive through a month-long dry spell without irrigation, thanks entirely to thoughtfully placed swales that had captured previous rainfall deep in the soil profile. The rain comes when it wants to, the gardener smiled. Our job is making sure it stays long enough to help. The dew collection trick. Few gardeners realize that morning dew can provide up to a quarter of their garden's water needs without any effort on their part. The Amish have long understood this natural phenomenon and designed their gardens to maximize dew collection. Morning dew forms when warm air meets cooler surfaces overnight. This moisture briefly clings to leaves and stems before evaporating as the sun rises. Plants with broad, slightly fuzzy leaves naturally collect more dew than others. The Amish deliberately include these dew-catching plants throughout their gardens to increase overall moisture levels. You can easily test if your plants are benefiting from dew by placing your hand under leaves before sunrise. If your hand comes away damp, nature is watering your garden for free. Strategic placement makes a significant difference. Plants in slight depressions or near stone walls collect more dew than those in exposed locations. During water restrictions that prevent regular irrigation, this dew collection trick becomes particularly valuable. One Amish gardener managed to keep his lettuce crop thriving through a dry July using only dew and minimal supplemental watering. The plants drink from the air when we know how to help them, he explained with a satisfied nod. By thinking beyond the watering can, the Amish tap into nature's own irrigation system that many conventional gardeners completely overlook. Strategic shade, less means more. While most gardening advice emphasizes full sun exposure, the Amish know a counterintuitive truth. For some vegetables, strategic shade actually increases production. This approach seems especially relevant as summer temperatures break records year after year. Lettuce, spinach, and other greens typically bolt, go to seed when days grow long and hot. But Amish gardens continue producing these cool weather crops throughout summer by providing afternoon shade. Tall plants like corn and sunflowers cast shadows that protect heat-sensitive vegetables during the most intense sun hours, while still allowing morning sunshine for photosynthesis. The clever aspect of this system is using deciduous structures that create shade in summer, but not in spring or fall. Pole beans growing on east-west trellises, for example, shade the north side during hot months, but don't block light during cooler seasons when sun is welcome. With this simple adjustment, an Amish gardener can harvest lettuce continuously while neighbors complain that it's too hot to grow greens. Plants are like people, an Amish farmer told me with a smile. Some enjoy the heat and others prefer a bit of shade on hot afternoons. By understanding these preferences and creating microclimates within the garden, the Amish extend growing seasons and increase harvests with no additional water or work, just thoughtful placement. The Amish remind us that patience, simplicity, and care will always outgrow shortcuts. These time-tested tricks prove that thriving gardens aren't built on chemicals or gadgets,